Hey everybody, Sterling R. Jackson here. I wanted to talk today about vocal problems, swelling, losing your voice, all kinds of things like that, and in hopes that, hopefully you're not experiencing these things, but if you are or you have, hopefully I can shed some light on some of those issues for you. So, all right, so now, in kind of no particular order, my journey with this stuff has been quite a long one. I've had a lot of different issues, of course, and I'm somebody that really appreciates and enjoys, distortional, raspy singing and screams and heavy things and all kinds of stuff like that. Always have, probably always will. To me, there's nothing better than somebody that has like a sandpapery voice and just, man, it just sounds like, it just sounds the best. And sometimes I aspire towards that, and then sometimes I back off and recognize that. I think it's important to recognize after a number of years or however long that you're trying to really aspire to do this, what your voice kind of naturally is inclined to do, what it naturally likes to do, and then what you're kind of forcing on it. And when it comes to a lot of these things, you can kind of force some things on your voice, but you have to be careful with it because you don't want to just keep forcing things on it and be like, I can't do that, and then get pissed off or blow your voice out and blah, 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 blah. It's like a muscle group. You cannot go into a gym and be like, but I want to lift a lot of weight, and then expect somehow that your body's going to acclimate. And yeah, some people are going to be more inclined, have the adrenaline, have the testosterone, whatever the hell, to do these things. But in the most in the most gentle of ways, I remind you to take time practice, take time to develop these things. So now, like I said, in no particular order, I worry about starting this off by talking about techniques like warming up and stuff, because I know that typically most people want to just go 0 to 100 and they're just pissed off, or you might be here and you might have found this because you currently have no voice because you've been going too ham with everything and you blew your voice out. So first of all, we got to start off by saying, like I was already saying, this is a muscle group. You have to treat it as such, and this is your body is a physical instrument. If you're not warming up, you're somebody that does not consider warming up, you do not think about those types of things, you're already setting yourself up for disaster, because just like exercise, you have to warm up and stretch these particular muscle groups. As we venture into swelling here and the good things about that and the bad things about that, warming up is a part of preparing the muscle group to be used and the vocal cords themselves so that they can be utilized correctly. When we want to, say, pick something up or train a muscle group like the bicep, for example, our brain, as we get prepared to do it, or we start off by lifting or moving the arms around, our brain is sending signals to not only tell the muscle that we're going to be doing some work, but also flush this muscle group with blood and oxygen so that it can be prepared to do work. Then what happens as we start to utilize that muscle group is that it swells, because we're not only damaging it, but we're also, it's like I said, we're preparing it to work, and the body is preparing it and flushing it with what it might need. This is a typical animalistic kind of fight or flight type of response for the muscle group so that it can be there when we need it. So the voice is the same way. And our warm-up procedures, the way that we're warming up, we're training the voice to do that. Simple enough. So adopt some kind of warm-up technique. That does not mean singing a song. Now, as we get into swelling in and of itself, and the good things, like I said, and the bad things about it, let's talk about some of the bad stuff about it. When that muscle group starts to swell, our vocal cords are located here behind the larynx, like this. If we're continuously focused on one area or one song that doesn't cover that much range, then we're isolating and swelling in a certain kind of isolated location, a smaller location in the voice. So if we're down here with all of our compression or all of our tension, we're pretty much only focused right there. Now, what happens is that the other groups above and below are things that are supposed to be working together as a mechanism, that are supposed to warm up together as a mechanism, are not getting utilized. Therefore, you're getting swelling in one location and not others. That's going to screw things up as you're trying to sing. Especially, this happens mostly as we try to sing higher. If we're singing exclusively kind of hard in our chest voice, or that's some of the songs that we're using to warm up, what happens, and I've talked about this before, is that this is the chest voice, this is the head voice, this is more of the whistle range and things like that. When we just swell and work on the chest, or we just get kind of tense in there, we're going like this, and then we're starting to cut off our head voice, and we're starting to minimize our access to our head voice. Therefore, our bridge will start to become more prominent because we're singing too heavy down here. So our that kind of thing is starting to become more prominent because we're just getting too swollen and too stuck here. Now, as you continue to do that, if we're going to go do a show and you keep going like that, like I said, you're just going like this. And then when you try to get to your falsetto or your head voice, it's even more weak, it's even more tiny, and it doesn't work very well. That's because you're just swollen down here. My approach as a vocalist or as a teacher is I tend to like to warm from the top down. I like to warm up the muscle groups up on the top, which causes the voice to stretch more. So when people are training these muscle groups, they tend to always think in terms of power or strength, and they're forgetting the entire process of, stamina, sustaining something, stretching, yoga, holding a pose, going for a long period of time. It's nice if something's strong, but if you can't hold it very well, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, if you can bench press this heavy amount of weight for 3 times and then you're done, that's not how singing usually works in a live setting. You don't go, we're going to do 3 songs and they're going to be badass and then my voice is going to be shot. Anyway, let's continue. So I like to warm from the top down. As we sing high correctly, we're pinpointing everything to this point. Everything's getting tinier and tinier and smaller as we get higher and higher. Not this way, this way. For me to do that, my voice has to go, and has to stretch downward. And that stretching is what keeps the resiliency in the voice and keeps everything bouncy and moving along. So keep that in mind as you practice. Keep that in mind as you learn. And if your vocal teacher is not talking about things like this, there's something you might want to bring up. So let's get into other forms of swelling. And I mentioned swelling because it, especially is for distortional singers or screamers, it's something you're going to be dealing with a lot, whether you recognize that or not. And sometimes it's going to confusingly work to your benefit. If you're a distortional singer or a screamer, or you know some, you're probably going to often hear them say something like, oh, the first night on tour, the first night we play a show, I'm usually not very good. And then the second night I get a little bit better. And then the third night I get a little bit better. Of course, this is not because the first night you're not as strong or whatever, and then overnight you gained some ability. No, this is simple swelling. Your voice has a specific amount of swelling. The musculature in your voice, maybe it's your false cords or your soft palate or something, has gained a certain amount of swelling, and then you're able to access it a little bit easier the next day. So, it might be a little bit easier for you to sing, or it might be a little bit easier for you to push into these spaces, or you might be a little bit more relaxed just because of the way that things are swollen. It gets confusing because you think that you did something good, and sometimes it's okay. Your voice acclimates and it's fine. In a lot of cases I've had this, but then I've gotten into positions where after 3 hours of singing, then I was able to sing really well. So then I got confused and was like, every time I just need to warm up for 3 hours. And that's absolutely not sustainable, and that's ridiculous. And once again, we're playing with the idea of, is this swelling good for me? Is there longevity in this? Or am I kind of wearing myself out and hurting myself? Only time will tell. And if your voice starts to not be able to recover at night, whereas a lot of young people can easily just sleep and then wake up and be like, cool, I'm ready to do it again. These things are important to figure out. Now, as I mentioned, if we're warming from the top down, or we're getting used to warming up our head voice and then warming up our chest voice and then trying to warm up some stuff in the middle, we're trying to balance the pressures. We're trying to balance the pressures of our compression, the way we are holding our voice, airflow, things like that. And we're warming the muscle groups up at the same. Do not think of your voice as just one thing down here. The voice is an entire, bunch of mechanisms that are working together to create sound, and we shouldn't be, isolating just one and trying to think about just one. Even if you're a distortional singer, I suggest that you learn how to utilize just those spaces and warm up those spaces as well. And quietly. Everybody wants to be loud. Everybody wants to be too fucking loud. I've had so many students that are finding their distortion loud, they're finding their screaming loud, and they think that that's their screaming voice and all this kind of stuff. That is not how you find distortion. The illusion of distortion and screams is that you turn something up so loud that it starts to crack up. and just crack. That's not how distortion works. Distortion is typically quieter than a clean note. Doesn't that blow your mind? Think about it logically for a second. We have a clean note, and then we put something over top of that. That's like adding another thing on top of anything. It's going to quiet it down. Now, if you push harder, you might be able to get some more volume, but still, it's making it quieter. So have that in mind when you're practicing these things too. All right, let's move on to singing too loud or screaming too loud and all those types of things. A lot of people are losing their voice and they're having problems with their voice because they're just going too hard. Whether they heard somebody that sings loud, that was my dog, whether they heard somebody that sings too loud, they want to emulate somebody that sings really loud, they want to sing loud because they think that's the shit and that's where the greatest person is, or they heard that Lane Staley used to sing loud or whatever. That is not a sustainable approach. That is not a good mental thing to have in your mind. Everything that you're doing should be able to be sung quietly or loudly, but you should find where your voice wants to be and what's healthy for your voice. Singing loud is actually something that's not really important anyway. Unless you're randomly somebody that performs without a microphone constantly, which is not very common at all in any culture that I know of, really. People are using microphones when they perform. The microphone is doing the work. Some of the heaviest singers that you know or you can think of actually are singing rather quiet. Think about like Lamb of God or something. That's making very odd compressed noises this close to a microphone, sometimes cupped like this, and it makes you sound like a monster. But it's not. It's a smaller kind of sound. Now, Aretha Franklin and a lot of these people could sing loudly after a while, but once again, singing loudly is setting you up for disaster. So many people setting up for disaster. I just heard, you can hear Chris Cornell talk about, you can see his career where he used to sing loud as shit and then watch him later backing off. Maynard James Keenan from Tool used to sing loud as hell, screaming loud as hell. Then later in his career, backing off. What are these people finding out? Are they just hurting their voice? Well, no, they're finding out after a while that they needed to quiet down, and they have better, not only sustainability, but a lot of times better tone and better inflection, a lot of improvements just because they're backing the hell off for a little bit. Now, this isn't ignorance on their part. This is trying to rise above instrumentation and trying to sell what you're doing emotionally. There's a lot of things involved here. But it's important. Judas Priest, he's another guy that continuously sang too loud and then recognized he had to keep bringing the energy back to a regular kind of volume. And pick your moments when you really can be loud, but then bring it back in. You shouldn't be that crazy loud compared to the way you're speaking and things. So important thing to remember. Get yourself in-ear monitors. Get yourself an in-ear monitor. I use one oftentimes if I don't have a setup where I can, plug everything in. So yeah, get yourself some in-ear monitors. It can be headphones. It doesn't have to be special made in-ear monitors like I have here, but I got these made a long, long time ago. I think they're about $400. I bought a kit on eBay to make my ear molds. It was like $15, made my own ear molds, and sent it away to Ultimate Ears and got these made. Now, they do make some now that have holes in them so that you can control your outside noise, like how much you can actually perceive of the noise in the room and stuff. But oftentimes I just use one so that I can hear myself, and it's a night and day difference. It really is. Instead of trying to hear yourself through a PA speaker or a floor wedge or something like that, people are singing too loud and they're pushing too much, and it's just fucking things up. It's making it difficult. You don't need to do that. Back the hell off. So, let's continue. Let's talk about a no-brainer, water and hydration. If you're somebody that drinks coffee, dries the shit out of the voice, alcohol usually dries the shit out of the voice. I know a lot of people like to have a little bit of alcohol before they go on stage to calm nerves and things like that. See what you can do. See what your body lets you do. Everybody's different. But hydration is important. Of course, drinking water while you're on stage and stuff, it helps a tiny bit, but it doesn't. There's a flap that comes down over the vocal cords. We're not pouring water onto the vocal cords. And it takes about 20 minutes for that hydration to actually reach the vocal cords. There is an important trick that I learned that I do use on stage or when I'm performing, whereas you take water like this. And you continuously try to breathe, like a reverse gargle and that helps to get hydration towards, the vocal cords in here. It's a good trick. Might seem stupid. You can totally get away with it on stage. You don't have to stand there for 5 minutes going like this, making water bong noises. It is a good trick, though. So water and hydration are very important. When I get on stage a lot still, adrenaline will kick in immediately and my mouth goes dry. And then I really have to battle and figure my way through that. But practice makes perfect. Getting comfortable on stage, these different things. But like I said, if you start off going hard, you're probably gonna have problems. Another point of this is that most of the times when I was on tour, really starting to try to get to know anything about being on stage, let alone myself on stage or whatever, I would get stuck in a chest voicey range, belting kind of range, and then this thing that I talked about happened, where everything just gets stuck in here, and then I'm totally stuck in my neck. And once you're swollen in a certain way, you cannot unswell those muscles. You cannot back the hell off. And this is why I talk about swelling, because once you're here, you cannot go back down here. That muscle group is swollen and it's ready to go, and it's like this, and you can't be like, oh, I'm gonna jump up here and try. You can't do that. Everything's just stuck like that. And then you have to play the whole show like that. Fuck. So here's another one. Should be kind of simple or easy to understand. If you are deviating a lot from your speaking voice or the regular tone of your head and your skull and whatever, you can definitely start to have problems. Think about somebody like John Mayer, who speaks a certain way and then and sound. Not that he's not a very talented person. He's singing completely different, and it's very heavy, and he's had voice problems because of that. There's plenty of examples of this. I'm an example of that because I sing like a lot of people for fun. But if you're having vocal problems and you're not sure why, are you mimicking somebody? Are you mimicking somebody that's outside of your range? Do they have a higher speaking voice than you? Check in with these types of things, because if you're forcing something onto the voice that it does not necessarily want or it's not very comfortable with, you could be having vocal problems because of that. Leads me to another thing. Pay attention to your jaw and neck tension. How much jaw or neck tension do you have? The more you keep picking up on that, especially this muscle right here, the swallowing muscle. If you swallow and put a finger right here, it should go like, move around. If you're really starting to grab a hold of that, if you look back at my videos that I posted way long ago, I used this muscle exclusively for my distortion and stuff. That can ruin your voice very, very quickly. And it sucks. So pay attention to types of things like that. Here's another one. Extra air. If you're somebody that's singing or thinks that your speaking or singing voice has anything to do with some kind of a pretty sound or extra air, this happens typically with my female students. Oh. That is not a singing voice. That is a singing style. That is a specific thing that you're doing. But it has nothing to do with your singing voice. It's just a stylistic thing that you're doing. And most of the time when I come across this, it's people that are afraid to sound more like themselves because they think that sounds prettier. They've adopted that into their mentality of what they think singing should be for them or something like that. It's a fear-based mechanism. So either way, anytime there is extra air passing over the vocal cords, they will continue to swell themselves. The little folds will continue to swell, and then you're going to start to have problems. When your vocal cords swell, sometimes it can be a good thing that they're swelling and they're ready to be utilized correctly, but a lot of times they can overswell, and then the vibration of them might not be consistent. Then you're going to start using extra musculature around them to keep them together and to find cord closure, and then you're continuously going to be setting yourself up for disaster. When you blow your voice out and you don't have a voice anymore, or your voice is hoarse, and then people are whispering, that is going to hurt your voice even worse again, because we're using extra air over the vocal cords. The best thing to do if you've lost your voice, or the best thing to do after a heavy show that you've sang or something like that, is to not speak. You need to give the voice rest. Don't be like, hey guys, I can't really talk very much right now or something, and then continue to talk like that. Brings me to another point. One of the worst things for people's voices is after a show in these crowded, loud places is to continue staying there and talking loudly. That will destroy your voice in 10 minutes, way faster than an entire hour of being on stage. Talking loudly is going to ruin things. I'll do a couple more of these because I know we're getting long here, but not supporting correctly. If you have not used if you have not figured out how to support correctly, this is one of the reasons why blowing your voice out afterwards at a show by talking too much happens, because people most of the time are not talking and utilizing support down here unless they're working in like a voice booth and calling sports games, or as they're a voiceover artist or something like that. Most people are not talking from down here, they're talking from up here. These muscles are gonna, everything's just gonna go downhill very fast when you're trying to speak loudly. If I can give any advice here, I lost my voice for, I just put up a video about this. You can look for that. I just put that up before this one. I lost my voice, my singing voice, for a number of years. My speaking voice started to go as well. And one of the main things to watch out for is acid reflux. It can be creeping up and making things swell and hurting your voice. I still have some problems with my voice. Get checked out by a doctor. Don't sit around and keep wondering about these things. It's not that crazy to go to a voice doctor and get scoped. It's not that much of a traumatic experience. The camera thing's not that bad. But go to a professional and spend a little bit more money where you can see your voice on a screen. Don't just take somebody's word for it that looked and said, yeah, you look good. You want to see these things. Maybe you might want to get a second opinion, but it's not worth you guessing or trying to look shit up online. And God knows, if you're somebody like me that deals with chronic illness and problems, WebMD is a nightmare. If your finger hurts and you look it up on WebMD, you're going to be convinced within a few minutes that you are, going to die. So, first of all, get checked out. Second of all, back the hell off of everything. If you're trying to recover your voice and it's been a couple days or something, do exercises like humming with your mouth closed throughout your range, so that you're not just going right back to heavy things or forcing your voice or getting mad at yourself or your voice emotionally and trying, that's integrating itself into there. These things are not going to be working out well for you. Just go easier and be gentle on yourself. And like I said, do warm-ups like and stretch the vocal cords instead of just I want to be heavy, I want to sing harder, that kind of stuff. So be better to yourself in that way. If you're somebody that's mixing a bunch of warm-ups together, you're mixing a bunch of lessons together, you're learning from a bunch of different people, I would suggest that not being very good either, because you might be getting conflicting information or different information from different people and not tying it all together very well. Stick with one source, one program, one art vocalist, something like that, and try to really stay with that for a while until you need to seek out more, or ask more questions or whatever you need to do. But just take your time with this. These are muscle groups. Your body is your instrument, and not only is your body your instrument, but like I said, your emotions are coming through this. Passion, drive, expression. That stuff takes time. And that stuff takes a lot of time with guitar and drums and things like that. I remember I've had a couple drum lessons, and I've played since I was 11. And I remember talking to the person that was trying to teach me, because we were doing this complicated stuff, and I was like wondering, how the hell do you ever, do these people get to the point where they're like expressing through this? And he told me basically, you're doing these things so often and so much that your body remembers how to do it. And therefore, you're free in your mind and other places to be able to express through it, because you don't actually have to think about it anymore. You don't want to be in a place where you're thinking about these things, especially when you're trying to sing and express yourself. You can't be thinking about systematically push down here, don't tighten up here, the next note needs to come this way, I need to shape my vowel this way. You can't do that. You need to do these things enough so that you can forget about it and be a part of the expressive experience and not the physical experience. So hopefully this helped in some type of way. If you're having vocal problems, I feel for you. I'm having some right now. Recently got sick and my voice is still kind of a little groggy. So I wish you well. And if you have questions, I am happy to try to answer them. Thank you.